It is February 4th, 2026. AbbVie just dropped their Q4 earnings, and I'm looking at the ticker right now, and it is red, down nearly 4%.
It is. For a company that's meant to be a rock in the pharma world, that definitely feels like a bit of a shakeup.
Bit of a rattle, yeah. But you're saying we shouldn't just look at that pre-market dip.
Absolutely not. Algorithms react in milliseconds. We're here to actually read the report. And if you dig past that one red number, the story is completely different.
Okay, but a miss is a miss. They reported adjusted earnings per share of $2.71. Wall Street wanted $3.37. That's a huge gap.
It's a 66-cent gap. And normally, yeah, when a company misses by that much, you'd think there's a fire somewhere.
Right. So why aren't we seeing more panic?
Because the fire was actually them just spending a ton of cash to go shopping.
Shopping for what?
For science. The miss wasn't operational. In fact, revenue was up 10% to $16.6 billion. The miss came entirely from something called acquired IPR&D.
Okay, translate that for those of us who aren't accountants.
In-process research and development. They spent a fortune buying new assets, securing new partnerships. In pharma accounting, you have to take that financial hit right up front.
So they're trading today's earnings number for tomorrow's blockbuster drugs.
Exactly. They essentially sacrifice the EPS number to fuel the future. If you strip out that one-time shopping spree, the underlying machine is running incredibly hot.
Okay, I can get behind that. But before we get to the future, we have to talk about the ghost of the past. For years, all anyone wanted to talk about with AbbVie was the Humira cliff.
And the cliff, that existential dread, the idea that when the world's best-selling drug lost its patent, AbbVie would just fall off the map.
And it was a $20 billion a year drug at its peak. Losing that kind of monopoly is terrifying.
It is.
So the mission for this deep dive is pretty simple. Looking at this report, have they actually survived that cliff? Or are they still falling?
Well, spoiler alert. The parachute opened a long time ago. They've landed, and they're already building a new base. And to understand how, we have to look at what they call the immunology fortress.
The fortress. The house that Humira built. So who are the new tenants?
The successors are two drugs, Skyrizi and Rinvoq. And originally, management was just hoping these two would replace the lost Humira revenue. A one-for-one swap.
But they're doing more than that.
Oh, they're not just filling the hole, they're building a mountain on top of it. Combined sales for just those two hit $25.9 billion for the full year 2025.
$25.9 billion. So for context, how does that stack up against what they even hoped for?
It's smashing expectations. They just raised their 2026 guidance for these two to over $31 billion.
Wow.
And that number is $500 million more than their previous long-term, moonshot estimate. They are accelerating past their own most optimistic targets.
Okay, let's drill into Skyrizi because these numbers are kind of staggering. You highlighted a metric called the in-play capture rate. What is that telling us?
This is the crystal ball metric. Market share tells you where you are today. Capture rate tells you where you're going tomorrow. It measures the percentage of new patients or patients switching drugs who choose Skyrizi. In the U.S. psoriasis market, that capture rate is over 55%.
Wait. So over half of all new decisions made by doctors and patients are going to this one drug.
Yes.
Who's in second place?
That's the kicker. The next competitor is 4 times lower. It's not a race, it's a rout.
Why? Is it just better marketing?
It's the clinical data. They talked about high skin clearance, specifically in really hard-to-treat areas. We're talking about the scalp, palms of the hand.
Which might sound like a small detail to some, but for a patient?
It's everything. Psoriasis in those areas is incredibly visible. It's stigmatizing. It affects your ability to work, to shake someone's hand. Older drugs really struggled there. Skyrizi just clears it.
And isn't the dosing different as well?
Hugely different. It's quarterly. 4 shots a year.
4 times a year.
Compare that to older drugs that might be every 2 wints. If you can get better results with way fewer injections, it's an easy choice.
And it's not just for skin anymore, right?
Yeah.
They're moving into the gut.
Yeah. Inflammatory bowel disease, IBD. For Crohn's and ulcerative colitis, their capture rate in the frontline setting, so for new patients, is around 75%.
That's practically a monopoly. Okay, so that's Skyrizi. Then there's Rinvoq, which I always hear described as a Swiss Army knife.
It's a great analogy. Unlike Skyrizi, which is an injection, Rinvoq is a pill. It's what's called a JAK inhibitor, so it works inside the cell to stop inflammation.
And being a pill is a massive deal for anyone who hates needles.
It is, but the standout data point here was the select switch study. They took patients who were failing on a drug like Humira,
Okay.
and they switched them to Rinvoq. And the study showed Rinvoq had double the remission rates compared to just trying a second injectable.
So if your first biologic fails, the data says the pill isn't just an alternative, it's a better bet.
Precisely. And they're not stopping. They've submitted for vitiligo, which would be the first systemic treatment ever, and for alopecia areata, they are just expanding the map for this drug.
And all the while, Humira is still fading in the background.
It is. Sales were down about 26% in the quarter because of the cheaper biosimilars. That's expected. But the key is that Skyrizi and Rinvoq are growing way faster than Humira is shrinking. The cliff has become a bridge.
A very, very profitable bridge. Okay, the immunology fortress is secure. But I want to pivot to the part of the report that really felt like a surprise. If you ask people what AbbVie does, they say immune diseases. They don't usually say brain drugs.
And that's a huge mistake. The neuroscience division is the sleeper hit of this whole report. Revenue hit $10.7 billion, up almost 20%.
20% growth on a division that size is massive. What's driving that?
It's really a two-pronged attack. First is the migraine franchise. You have Botox Therapeutic, AbbVie, and Qulipta. Qulipta is now the #1 branded pill for preventing episodic migraines.
Okay.
But the real scientific leap, and what I think you should really pay attention to, is what's happening in Parkinson's disease.
This is where we get to Vyalev.
Yeah.
They're using the word blockbuster for 2026. What makes it so different?
So the standard treatment for Parkinson's is levodopa. It's been around forever. But the problem is that the pills wear off. Patients live on a roller coaster.
Right, the on time and off time.
Exactly. On time is when the drug works and you can move. Off time is when the symptoms come rushing back before the next dose. It's awful.
It sounds exhausting just planning your entire day around those windows.
It is. Vyalev changes the delivery. It provides continuous 24-hour delivery of the drug. It smooths out that whole curve. They're seeing huge reductions in that off time, especially overnight.
So you can actually wake up and move without waiting for that morning pill to kick in.
Exactly. For many patients, that morning period is the hardest part of the day. Vyalev fixes that, and they think it'll be a billion-dollar drug next year.
And there's more coming for Parkinson's.
There is. A new oral drug called tavapadon should be approved later this year. So they're building a whole ecosystem, not just one product.
And then there's psychiatry. Vraylar.
Vraylar is a beast. $1 billion in sales just in Q4. But what's interesting is how Vraylar is basically funding the development of the next generation.
Which brings us to my favorite part of the deep dive, the pipeline. The sci-fi stuff. I was reading the transcript and I literally did a double take. AbbVie is working on psychedelics.
It certainly sounds that way, doesn't it? They had a drug in development called bretisilocin for depression. It targets the 5-HT2A receptor.
Which is the classic psilocybin magic mushroom receptor.
It is.
So, how is this not just microdosing in a lab coat?
It's all about logistics,
Yeah.
scalability. Right now, if you get a treatment like Spravato, which is ketamine-like, you have to stay in the clinic for hours. You have the dissociation, the trip, and you have to be monitored.
Right. It's a nightmare for scheduling. Nobody has 4 hours to spare twice a week.
Exactly. Bretisilocin is engineered to be short-acting. The hallucinatory period is very brief. So you get that neuroplasticity, that brain reset, but you're out of the clinic much, much faster.
And the report used the word remission. That is a very heavy word in mental health. We usually talk about managing depression.
It is. They're not just talking about managing symptoms. They're seeing immediate and durable effects that create, in their words, a remission-like state.
High risk, but incredible reward. Okay, from the mind to the body. They're also totally overhauling their cancer strategy. Their big blood cancer drug, Imbruvica, is fading.
It is. Sales are down about 21%. Fierce competition, pricing pressure. So they are pivoting hard from blood cancers to solid tumors using something called ADCs.
Antibody drug conjugates. I've heard these described as guided missiles.
That's the perfect way to think of it. Or like a microscopic robot. You have an antibody that acts as a homing device for the tumor cell.
Okay.
Attached to it is a linker, like a safety pin, and that's holding a toxic chemotherapy payload, the warhead.
So it patrols the body, finds the tumor, and then what?
It latches on, gets inside the cancer cell, the linker unclips the safety pin, and it drops the bomb right inside.
So you get the killing power of chemo, but without all the hair loss and the systemic misery.
That's the promise. High efficacy, low collateral damage. Their lead candidate is for lung cancer, but they are doubling down. They just signed a new deal with a company called Remegen for a PD-1 VEGF bispecific antibody.
More alphabet soup. What does that do?
Think of it as air support for the robot. The ADC is the bomb, and this new drug basically strips away the cancer's camouflage and cuts off its blood supply. It's a multi-pronged attack.
Okay, so we've covered the successes of the sci-fi pipeline, but in the spirit of a balanced deep dive, we have to talk about the weak spot. Aesthetics. Botox Cosmetic, Juvederm. Looks like the Zoom boom might be over.
It has definitely slowed down. Global aesthetics was down about 1.2%, and Juvederm, the fillers, was down almost 11%.
What's happening? Are people just over lip fillers?
It's economic. These are cash pay procedures. Insurance doesn't cover them. When disposable income gets tight, filler is one of the first things to go. They specifically mentioned weakness in Brazil and China.
So how do they fix it? Just wait for the economy to get better?
No, they innovate. They have a new product coming late in 2026 called Trenibot E.
Trenibot E sounds like a transformer.
It's a fast-acting, short-duration toxin.
Wait, short duration. Why would I want Botox that wears off faster?
Because you're scared. This is for the commitment phobes. There's a huge group of people who are curious about Botox, but terrified of looking, frozen for 3 months if they don't like it.
Ah, so it's the starter toxin.
Exactly. Trenibot E lasts maybe 2 or 3 weeks.
Try it, you'll like it, and if not, it's gone soon. That's brilliant.
It lowers the barrier to entry. Then you upsell them to the long-lasting stuff. It's a customer acquisition tool.
Okay, we have to wrap with the elephant in the room. This earnings call happened on the same day as a major political announcement. AbbVie signed a voluntary agreement with the Trump administration.
This was a fascinating piece of corporate strategy. Usually these calls avoid politics, but they put this front and center.
So break down the trade. What did AbbVie have to give up?
They pledged lower prices for Medicaid and some direct-to-patient cash options, basically cutting out middlemen to lower costs for vulnerable people. They also committed to a massive $100 billion investment in U.S. R&D over the next decade.
$100 billion? That's a huge Buy American pledge. So what do they get in return for all that?
Certainty, the single most valuable commodity in business. They got exemptions from tariffs, which is huge, and crucially, an exemption from future pricing mandates for the next 3 years.
So while other pharma companies might be battling new price caps every 6 months, AbbVie just bought themselves a 3-year shield from all of that.
Precisely. When you're trying to forecast $67 billion in revenue for 2026, the last thing you want is the government changing the rules on you halfway through. They traded investment for a clear runway.
It just clears the fog, lets them execute instead of lobby.
It does. It removes the biggest unknown from their spreadsheet.
So, zooming all the way out, we started by asking if there's life after Humira.
And the answer is a resounding yes. They didn't just survive the cliff. They built a fortress in immunology. They unlocked a whole new growth engine in neuroscience. They hit a record $61.2 billion in revenue.
But here's the thought that's sticking with me. We talked about chronic treatments like Skyrizi and Rinvoq.
Yeah.
That's the classic pharma model, right? Recurring revenue.
Yeah.
But then we looked at the pipeline. Psychedelics aiming for remission, ADCs for targeted kills, KRT therapies to literally reset the immune system.
The shift from treatment to cure.
Yes. And if AbbVie actually succeeds in curing depression or putting cancer into permanent remission, don't they technically lose a customer? You don't need a monthly pill if you're cured. It feels like the ultimate paradox of this industry. The better you are at your job, the harder it is to keep growing.
That is absolutely true. But as they proved today, if you don't cannibalize your own business with better science, someone else will. And they would much rather be the ones selling the cure than the ones watching their treatment become obsolete.
A terrifying and exciting place to be. Well, that's it for this deep dive into AbbVie's 2025. Thanks for listening.
Thanks, everyone.